Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us. We're so happy you've chosen to spend some time with us this weekend. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we're fortunate enough to have not one, but two world class literary festivals. My name's Nora, and I'm the executive director of Litquake, which is San Francisco's literary festival. We'll be presenting our 26th annual event this fall. Our festival spans 16 days from October 9th to the 25th, featuring more than 120 programs at more than 60 venues all across the Bay Area. Everything culminates with Lit Crawl San Francisco, a one-night extravaganza that takes over the Mission District with close to 50 separate events on a single night. In addition, as we announced just this past week, we're whetting festival audiences' appetites this year with a series of programs this September that we're calling Amuse-Bouche. First, on September 6th, we've been partnering with Ziziva Magazine and the Roxy Theater for a quarterly series of movie nights. This one's a matinee featuring Alexander Chi discussing a film that has influenced his work, followed by a screening of that film. The very next day, on Sunday, September 7th in Berkeley, we're partnering with Lit Camp on a really exciting program featuring 5 authors of speculative fiction, all of whom have imagined a future version of California in their recent work. And believe it or not, it's not all bad news. On September 15th, we'll be at the Swedish American Hall with, appropriately enough, Swedish singer-songwriter Jens Lekman, who has collaborated with best-selling author David Levitan on David's new book, Songs for Other People's Weddings. Jens wrote original songs to accompany the novel about a wedding singer with his own romantic woes, and he'll be performing several of those in a program emceed by Andrew Sean Greer. Finally, on September 28th, we'll present our annual Small Press Book Fair in Yerba Buena Gardens, featuring a curated collection of dozens of small presses and literary magazines. This will be anchored by our Litquake Out Loud stage, which brings together several of the Bay Area's best BIPOC and LGBTQ+ curators to showcase their work in readings and performances along with live music. That weekend will also be the first chance to get your hands on the printed program guide for Litquake, which, just to bring it home one more time, takes place October 9th through the 25th. In the meantime, you can find out more information about our September lineups and sign up for our mailing list at litquake.org. And you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Dora at the Bay Area Book Festival. Dora, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nora. And hi, everybody. We're so happy that you're here. So I'm the Deputy Director of Programs at the Bay Area Book Festival. And before I hand it over to our fantastic speakers, I also want to highlight some of our upcoming events. And you can find information about all of these at baybookfest.org and on our Instagram, baybookfest. So our annual festival will be taking place again for the 12th year on May 30th and 31st, 2026. So save the date for that and let us know who you would like to see at the festival. Our call for proposals officially opens in mid-September, but you're welcome to contact us with ideas anytime. Our theme for 2026 is writing the future. So we're very exciting about that to see what people are writing up for us. You're also cordially invited to our upcoming virtual silent auction opening in mid-August, where we will be fundraising for the benefit of our festival with some amazing service items such as manuscript review, writing workshops, studio time for audiobooks, and other things that writers and readers might find useful. Many of these services can be accessed from anywhere in the world, so please don't hesitate to join us and support us even from afar. But if you are in the area, you can join us for our timely and important event in Menlo Park at Kepler's Books, discussing trans narratives of America with authors Caro de Robertis and Nico Lang, moderated by Brita Strohmeyer. The event will take place on September 9th, and tickets are on sale right now. In October, we will be launching our quarterly Married Dialogue speaker series with speakers Rebecca Solnit and Steve Phillips as our first discussion pairing. The series is established to end gender critical thinking and invite nuance into the ways people think about our complicated world, which, you know, in my opinion, we kind of need right now. Another exciting event coming up is we will be hosting a conversation between author and scholar Nicholas Box and novelist and cultural critic Keenan Norris, where they will be discussing Boggs's groundbreaking new book, Baldwin, A Love Story, which is the first major biography of James Baldwin in over 30 years. So this conversation will take place in Oakland on November 6th, and tickets are actually on sale right now. Again, you can find information about all of these events on our website and on our Instagram. So please follow us there and join in on the fun. Now, finally, it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce the moderator for this important conversation on Narrating the Mother. And her name is Nayomi Munaweera, and she is an award-winning novelist and a very valued member of the Bay Area Book Festival Literary Advisory Committee. Her debut novel, Island of a Thousand Mirrors, won the Commonwealth Book Prize for the Asian region and was shortlisted for the DSC Prize and Man Asia Prizes. It was chosen as a Target Book Club book. Her second novel, What Lies Between Us, won the Sri Lankan National Book Awards and was shortlisted for the Northern California Book Prize. The Huffington Post raved Munaweera's prose is a visceral and inedible, devastatingly beautiful reminiscent of the glorious writing of Louise Erdrich, Amy Tan, and Alice Walker, who also find ways to tell through fiction. She is proud of all her writing students from various MFAs and in her writing covens. Welcome, Nayomi.
Thank you so much, Dora. Thank you so much, Nora. Both of you, wonderful to be here with Litquake and Bay Area Book Festival and these two amazing writers. I welcome to everyone who is here. Wherever you are in the world, so happy to have you. I am going to do some bios and then call the authors on the screen. So Kate Briggs grew up in Somerset, UK, and lives and works in Rotterdam, Netherlands, where she founded and co-runs the writing and publishing project Short Pieces That Move. She's the translator of 2 volumes of Roland Barthes' lecture and seminar notes of the Collège de France, The Preparation of the Novel and How to Live Together, both published by Columbia University Press. She's on the editorial board of Barthes Studies, an open access journal for research in English on the work of Roland Barthes. In 2017, she published This Little Art, a narrative essay on the practice of translation. In 2021, she won the Wyndham Campbell Prize, and her debut novel, I just finished it, it's gorgeous, I highly recommend. The long form was published in 2023. Please welcome Kate Briggs. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Hi. I'm quickly going to also introduce Iman so we can get into our conversation. There's so much to say. Poet, writer, academic, and translator Iman Mersal was born in 1966 in the northern Egyptian Delta and immigrated to Canada in 1999. She first published in Arabic in 2019 Traces of Enayat, which won the prestigious 2021 Sheikh Zayed Book Award, making her the first woman to win its literary category. Traces of Enayat also won the 2024 James Tate Black Prize for Best Biography and was a National Book Critics Circle Award finalist. Author of 5 books of Arabic poetry, her most recent poetry collection, The Threshold, won the 2023 National Translation Award and was a finalist for the 2023 Griffin Poetry Award. She is also the author of Motherhood and Its Ghosts, published as part of Transit's Undelivered Lectures series, which weaves a new narrative of motherhood through diaries, readings, and photographs. She is a professor of Arabic literature at the University of Alberta, Canada, and a Dorothy and a Louis B. Coleman Center for Scholars and Writers Fellow at the New York Public Library. Okay, please welcome Iman Mersal. All right, we're all finally here. Great, welcome. I'm so thrilled to be speaking to both of you. It's such a pleasure. I'm going to go back and forth, and some questions are for both of you. Kate, in this book, one of the things you're exploring is the nature of maternity and time. Can you speak to that?
Oh, straight in. Well, what a wonderful question, and it's a great pleasure to be here. So thank you for having me. Time, indeed. I think one of the things the long form does, as you know, is tries to set living with a newborn alongside the novel as a form. So the long form of the title refers to both kind of mothering and also babyhood in a way, and the form of the novel. And I think time presented itself as something important, or a potential common ground between those two, in the sense that both seem to me to enact a form of on the one hand, continuity, ongoingness. This just keeps going. This is, this is long. This is a stretched experience with radical interruption and breakage. So a kind of continuous discontinuity, or a discontinuous continuity. And those were the experiences of time that I think both the novel and living with a newborn baby give us. So I wanted to try and write a novel that somehow performed that as well as spoke about it.
Please. And I'm also going to invite both of you to just have a conversation. If any of these questions sort of like speak to either of you, please jump in at any point, so we can have it be a little bit flowy. But Iman, I want to ask you, you speak about the narrative of motherhood, and how do you define that societally? And then also, like in your book, how are you complicating that?
I think searching for, ways to articulate your own questions about motherhood is what brought me to what is a dominant narrative about motherhood. And of course, the first thing you would look at will be different feminist writing and discourses, and also to see it next to literature, like general literature and arts you are, already familiar with. And I think the first question I had was, how can we look at motherhood from within, as a crack from within, as I said in the book, not as it's just what is giving to us from the dominant narrative about motherhood as lacking a conflict, as unconditional love, and so on and so forth. In order to complicate this, you have to rely on your own experience and observation, but also readings, because readings really, I see it in the long form and in my book. Readings other people experience does not just help us to find out our question, but to find the language that we can address it and share it with others, because language is very important. How can we address what we feel in language?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. This is a question for both of you, and it's a pretty big question, so maybe we can take a little bit of time with it. You both speak about societally imposed maternal guilt, and the societally imposed, and then also the internal guilt of motherhood, right? I was thinking about this a little bit like internalized homophobia, or maybe internalized like transphobia or something, or internalized even like patriarchy, right? I don't know if it's similar, but just maybe speak to us about societally imposed maternal guilt, and then also like internalized maternal guilt. Yeah. Big question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think something that I've really resonated with me with what Iman is doing in her book, and this notion of the dominant narrative and the sort of dominant images that we have around what a mother is or should be or looks like. I think the way that appears in the long form is the idea of the mother as a character, there are two main characters. There's Helen and her baby Rose, but Helen, sort of thinking about this idea of a character that that she should sort of somehow know how to behave, that everyone kind of knows what that is. You say mother, even when sort of writing about motherhood, you do. I found that when I was working on the long form, there's a sense of, oh, we know what that is, we know what that looks like, we know what colors that is, we know what palette that is, we know what gestures that involves. You know, there's a sense of it already being decided and fixed and uncracked. Sealed is the term that Iman uses. And yet in Helen's experience, and that was through observing my own experience and sort of trying to draw on that, it's also kind of radically unknown how to be this, how to do this. I think there is a sense of it being utterly ungrounded, utterly novel and new, and requiring requiring reinvention and regrounding each time. And it's that I really wanted to sort of put my finger on, was this necessity, this requirement to make it up, is a phrase that's used in the novel, and really with the resonance of some form of fiction and a narrativization of one's own way of doing this, which might involve borrowing or reactivating gestures from the past, inherited gestures of holding, for example, or wrapping, or walking, or thinking, or imagining. But as we know, or at least I guess as a translator, I feel strongly, that like any sort of new redoing, any reactivation brings in newness and has to be grounded in its own terms. So I think your question was about guilt, and I think perhaps it plays out in the long form in relation to this idea of some notion of how one should be or how one should behave, and not matching that, but the creativity or the energy of the experience coming from, indeed, there not actually being a model that's straightforward to follow. One has to like figure it out and invent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously guilt is in the core of motherhood, and it brings again this huge gap between our individual experiences and what is imposed on us in terms of motherhood. But also it's really more complicated than this, because for example, I talk about motherhood guilt in my book in a particular way. I'll tell you about two new forms of guilt that I have been feeling lately. One of them is really seeing the world around you. It has nothing to do with your individual experience, that you didn't do enough, you are not good enough. No one took this black spot from your heart when you give birth of guilt, so you can be free of it. So you are carrying it with you, and with life it takes new shapes. So witnessing a war, that like the war we are witnessing in Gaza, for example, in the early days of war, I saw this like few seconds image of a mother who wanted to fetch food for her kids under the siege and bombing and everything. She came back and her kids, the house were not there. Everything is gone. And all she was thinking about was they died without eating. I was bringing food to them, so they died hungry. They were killed hungry. And I kept thinking about it, like instead of facing even the face in this first moment, she takes the whole war, which is bigger than any of us, and it's a tragedy and a drama to put her on her shoulder as a mother who did not come back on time to feed her kids before they are killed. And this registered with me like crazy, like which world we have been witnessing, and we brought kids to this world, and we have to remember this always, that they are here, but how can they navigate this really around us? While I was reading the long form, I actually felt a new type of guilt I never felt before. As a writer, I never gave space to a baby in my writing. A baby is seen usually from my point of view. The baby in my writing does not occupy any space almost. And then you read a novel where the baby is occupying huge space. I mean, the baby is 10 pounds, but in the novel is a persona.
Mhm.
And then you feel like, oh, what was wrong with me seeing and writing the baby? And it's absolutely something I never thought about before reading the long form. So what I'm trying to say is this guilt takes different shapes every time we move in life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Shape-shifting guilt.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so well. And on the one hand, you know, it kind of devastates me. Both the things you said are devastating on completely different scales. But that you should feel that should activate guilt in you. But I think you've pointed to something that was kind of key to the project, was this sense of the mother, the kinds of literature we have, the kinds of stories that get told, and the kinds of experiences that are narrated, at least in my reading around mother, seem to be so much about, well, from the adult perspective, from the adult point of view of what has this done to me? What am I doing in relation to this? And I find it very interesting. I find living with other people interesting, you know, as we all do. It's a very human form of living together. It's a very particular form of human living together, in that one of the two is so needy and dependent and vulnerable, and one is charged or tasked with caring, keeping that tiny being alive. But I think what's interesting about it is precisely that interaction, that sort of swapping of agency and power that's happening all the time. And that, at least in my experience of it, that's where I think motherhood can be unsealed from this idea of this focus on the adult perspective, and become something more like a relational politics that's happening. Because what we're doing is dealing with two people reckoning with each other. And this, I think, does come out so strongly in your book, Iman, for me as a reader, that reckoning with the difference of another person, and the fact that they're not simply assimilatable to one's own experience. In fact, my son said to me yesterday, "Mom, we're not the same." Like, just something like, I was sort of like, why could you not be? And it's like, just that reminder, you realize we're not the same. It's like, yeah, I do. I realize we're not the same. But isn't that the basis of so much of the thinking we need to do? We are not the same, and yet I need to respect your difference, make room for your difference. So that sort of sharing of narrative perspective was part of trying to get at that.
Iman, yeah, thank you so much for bringing in the genocide and war that we are watching in real time. It is heartbreaking and so devastating. I have a question here about the Victorian phenomena of hidden mother photography, which you write about, which is just gorgeous and so interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So would you mind telling us about the Victorian phenomena of hidden mother photography?
Yeah, I'll just tell maybe our people who are attending, because who don't read the book, that what brought me to it was a question really about my own only picture of my mother. Like, I grew up in a village in Egypt in the 70s, so there was no camera at home then. And you have to go to studio to take a picture. And this only picture with my mother was taken in a studio in the city. And of course, it was kind of photoshopped, because the drop on scene behind us was a colonial house, which my mother choose to be in the background. So anyway, this only picture, I contemplated it, went to it so many times in my writing, even especially in poetry, but I felt always that my mother is a ghost. She doesn't exist as I remember here in this image. And then I revisited this again in Motherhood and Its Ghosts, when you are looking really around in motherhood photography, in archive, in social media, and in professional sites, and so on. And you feel that mothers are invisible always. Maybe they are overt. There is a very understood, straightforward purpose and reception of a mother in a picture, because of the maternal gaze, because of the arrangement, because of whatever. And I couldn't really articulate how I see this hidden mother in what I see around me until I came across Linda linear collection of hidden mother photography in 19th century, and it's basically a way of taking picture in the early time of camera since 1860s on until beginning of 20th century, that in order to keep the baby still and clear in the picture, you have to put him independent by themselves. And in order to do this, a mother has to be hidden behind a curtain or um, a cloth, in order to take the picture of the baby. So this, like spending time with this collection, really is what made this metaphor very important in my thinking about motherhood and then in my book, because how can we locate our mothers in their images, one question, but also how to see mothers in the archive, in their pictures, why they are hidden and why they don't exist unless there is a pretext, a pre-image, uh, a melodramatic story about them, a crime, a war, um, sexuality, if the mother is sexuality is explicit in a picture or shown. And also, it took my attention that even this instrumental mothers can go back to be hidden again because of repeating the images. And since we mentioned the war and genocide, I mean, Palestinian mother exists by herself with her story, but with all of these images everywhere, she go back to be a hidden mother again. She can't stand by. This is a type of mothers, a type of mothers under war. So she is going back to be hidden once more.
Do you feel, Iman? I feel we Naomi, I think, has left briefly because of
Yeah.
issues. But would you? There's something about the question of invisibility. Do you feel like this for you, the invisibility or the hiddenness of the mother is actually a result of saturation in a way, a saturation of images? It's almost like the flipping point or the consequence of being so, in a way, so also so surrounded with a certain kind of iconography. Would that be the case for you? Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It's this kind of being overt, being familiar, being do exactly what expected from you in an image.
Mm-hmm.
And unless something else comes to scratch this image, you would be invisible.
Mm.
Yeah.
What I found so striking, and it's really for those readers who've not seen these images, you also send us to a way you can do an internet search if you look for hidden mothers or camouflaged mothers, Victorian era. It's just kind of extraordinary seeing these forms draped and literally camouflaged and allowing the baby to sit. And it also struck me that you use that, you unpack that as a metaphor so beautifully, but how that could also become, I think, one of the things that's sort of being in this relationship of intensive codependence reveals or shows to us, or could show to us if we were to interrogate it and be interested in it, right? Think about it, is the condition of codependence, which is just indeed the human condition. I was also looking at those images thinking, we're all, if I'm sitting upright, it's because of my chair, it's because of my room and because of whatever structures of support that are there. I wondered if that was also, for you, sort of opening out the metaphor was something that you were, I guess my question is how far you see mothering as a kind of very specific, singular human experience, and how far you feel it speaks or has things to say to the general human condition, or is it both singular and generalizable?
This is a beautiful question. I would answer it very quickly because I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I really, when I think about, like mother as mother is not independent. Mother are dependent also on the discourse about motherhood are surrounded by, and growing up hearing and receiving and so on. And this really what makes talking about motherhood sometimes from also individual experience very important, because all of these individuals should be part of this dominant narrative and shouldn't be excluded all the time, because something else is occupying the space. And this will actually make me ask you a question that looks far away, but in my mind it's actually in the same theme. It's about citation in your book, because I think really I mean, sometimes you read citation in a book and you think about them as hidden sentences, but sometimes also they are able to generate and to be involved in the thread of thoughts the writers are using. And one of the things I admire about the long form was really the citation. I couldn't think about any other, you know, sentence here except this sentence that you remembered from a particular book or text. And also seeing all of this in terms of a newborn in one hand in the story, and one of the early novels in one hand, that did not even apply the form of novel as we know it. So I would like you to talk about citation and a newborn.
Yeah, citation and well, thank you. Oh, wonderful question. Yes, I mean, the long form is a book that's dependent and relational. So in the ways that we described, you know, that a baby is, but also that a mother is, that a human is. So and it does make those forms of dependence and relationality evident through a long list of sources at the back, and through indeed citing and even drawing in a kind of tutor text, almost like this early novel Tom Jones by Henry Fielding, which is sort of self-published in the mid 18th century, which declares itself to be the first novel, the founder of a new province of writing. What I was so interested in about that was that this new province of writing being kind of inaugurated by the history of Tom Jones, a foundling, is actually a form built of both fiction and essay, and is moving between those two different registers and sort of statuses. But citation, I guess, I wanted to write something that was not single voiced. I mean, even writing in the first person, I don't think one is ever really single voiced. You know, you are reversed by, you know, citations, references, but something that's really kind of explicitly a collaboration, and collaborating with ideas and energies and ways of phrasing things that couldn't have been generated solely by Helen, or indeed solely by Rose, who is 6 weeks old, so is like pre-verbal. But one of the things I was interested in was, what if I were to take a vocabulary that normally we use? A lot of the description that is around Rose comes from a philosophical vocabulary, like reading Merleau-Ponty and his like phenomenology of perception, and you know, really sort of lifting, just finding these beautiful phrasings or Bakhtin, these phrases which felt to me that kind of had a vibration quality. And so it sort of seems like incongruous in a way to sort of use this vocabulary that we might associate with philosophy or literary theory and kind of, you know, activate it around a baby. But that was also, that incongruity was something I was interested in, because these things are these experiences are underexplored, I think, in terms of their political and philosophical dimensions, and yet kind of radically interesting. I really believe have so much to sort of offer, so much to so many scenes of thinking.
Actually, I also when I think about citation in your book, like, and I think about my book, I felt like I had this interest in oral also citation, because I mean, when we talk about motherhood, unfortunately, and you think about third world, just to position myself right, or between two worlds, like my mother died during giving birth. I mean, in a moment, as I said in the book, when the oral traditions were disappearing or leaving a space to what the medical institution, I mean, modernity and modernism and medical institution were taking off, but not good enough to save a woman with a stillborn baby. And at the same time, this relation with oral tradition was disappearing. I mean, she was not told that, listen to the baby movement and see if something is wrong, to raise it or whatever. So what I'm trying to say, I think this oral tradition everywhere, not just in the third world, is worthy also of being included in the light of the medical institution, and next to it, sometimes with it and against it, and so on. So I would like to ask you about orality and motherhood, like in your own experience.
In my own personal experience, I mean, there is an extraordinary moment in your book, among many extraordinary moments, where there is this sort of a woman that you meet in a circle, like four
Group
women,
therapy, yeah.
exactly, who's been sharing a method for enabling herself to breastfeed her child. She hadn't been able to breastfeed her child and was using a so-called kind of folk remedy, which is actually effective. And it's written so economically, but it really lands this, exactly what you're saying, the kind of the crucial importance of sharing experience and stories and tricks and tactics and a common base of knowledge. In my own experience, actually, maybe this relates to, like, maybe a kind of solution that I find to many things, which is what, when faced with an experience or a feeling that feels unfamiliar, I try and read, to seek out. So the book there is a baby manual in the kind of Penelope Leach's manual for sort of dealing with the first year, which my mother bought me a copy of. It's like she had a copy of this, and she, I think she did, or at least this is what she handed. So I have this kind of, this sort of like photos which look very dated and so on, and that appears is quoted in the book, that the character Helen is also reading and drawing from, and I think maybe to fold this back to your question of citation, I feel is that there is knowledge in that book. Penelope Leach, if you don't know that work, writes beautifully, really beautifully, full of kind of intelligence and warmth about how to be with this radical newcomer. And I felt like her lines, her phrasings were as beautiful and as powerful and as worthy of citation as the philosophers I mentioned, or Henry Fielding, or so. I guess the oral is not. Helen doesn't have that many people to talk to, but a lot is coming through this variety of sources. But I wonder if I can ask, I haven't really answered the orality question, which is a really vital one, but I wonder if I could fold it into a question back to you about form, because your Motherhood and Its Ghosts presents, well, I wonder how you call it when you describe it to yourself, because there is perhaps the category we might use in a bookshop would be essay, but it's in these distinctive moments, and the form it breaks. I think it cracks, actually. As a reader, I felt these cracks and it's something being held together which could just fly apart almost. And I wonder how you arrived at that form and how you think about that form.
Well, as you know, you don't choose a form.
Maybe, you sort of,
it comes. So, no, I mean, at the beginning, it was this really first chapter, which was a piece to be published in a feminist magazine in Arabic. And I was interested in where is motherhood, my motherhood in feminism? Where can I look? How can I locate it? Can I find something that can speak to me directly? And this question about violence, guilt, about modernity and oral tradition, and that stopped to be passed from one generation to another. So I had so many questions, and I thought that's it. I was already writing traces of Anayat, so I was already having a big project for like 10 years.
Right.
So what happened is when you open a door, you don't know what will happen after. I started to see this wound there, like that is, and it became urgent to be written, despite that I have a big other project. And it takes you from one thing to another as the 4 chapters are laid out. So it's like sometimes it's photography, and to continue exploring the dominant narrative, and also to reconcile with my mother only photo in a personal level. But also what about seeing motherhood from other side, like not just as a daughter of a mother but a mother of a son. And then the idea of grave that actually unionized my relation with my motherhood and with my son became so urgent to be written. So what I'm trying to say is, really, form does not come before writing. It's always, because while you are writing, you are learning about yourself, about the tone of voice you are heading toward, and also the structure. So things come together or not. It's also a matter of luck, I guess. I guess.
No, I agree. And I think that's something like that, seeking a container, seeking a container for something which in a way is uncontained. We do feel that there is such grief contained. It's a short book, but there's such grief, and it's only barely contained, barely held. It feels like it needs the shorter form in order to achieve its power, to have that sense of the uncontainable. Yeah, as a reader, that's certainly how I felt. Yeah. I'm conscious Naomi, yes, Nora is here.
All right. Hello. Yes, apologies for the technical difficulties on Naomi's part, but I am here to convey a couple of her questions. And amazingly, I mean, not amazingly, because you both have read one another's work, obviously, you've actually been touching on a lot of the directions that Naomi was intending to go and the questions that she had prepared in this conversation. So thank you for rolling with this. There's never a dull moment with these virtual discussions. But one of the questions that Naomi had for you, Iman, was about the significance of dreams in your book, and I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you read a book about pregnancy, it's usually mentioned very quickly that there are lots of dreams. But I don't know. I didn't find yet a study about that, really. But the bringing dreams into my book was really a great way to articulate what I can't articulate through dreams, because they are real dreams. I did not make them up, the 2 big dreams in the 3rd chapter. And the reason of that was how to write about a child who is facing challenges, mental challenges, who you can't protect, who you can't understand, who you can't represent in front of school and medical institution and society. So in order to do this, you have so many options as a writer, but the one I didn't go to is really to tell the whole story, because there was no whole story to begin with. There was this moment that are registered, that are painful, that you are carry with you, but you don't understand. And after trying to write this chapter in 2 different other ways, and I felt like this is not the tone of voice. This is not what gives the son his dignity. he's independent. So I was looking at my diary when I found these two dreams, and it was like, okay, I can select some entries, not all of that entries, of course. I mean, like not a whole day, but sometimes it's just a scene, it's a short conversation, but just to allow these two dreams to be in, because they are articulating what I can't as a writer articulate. And here brings also the problem of being a writer and a mother, which is not really the most important thing at all, but it's part of my experience. It's actually, you have actually trouble sometimes to articulate this relation, this conflict, this fear, because you want to do it in your own language, and and your own language does not have a reference. Like, you have something to help you doing this except listening and thinking and going back to your own private writings and see what you can find there.
Mhm.
We are going to be turning to audience questions in a couple of minutes. So, audience members, if you have questions that you'd like to present to either or both of our authors, please do enter those into the comments field on your screen, and we'll relate those in a couple of minutes. But I had a couple of questions of my own. I think, Kate, one of the things that I really appreciated about your book, and that I've seen in some other recent writings, is this idea of the interiority of the mother, especially of a newborn, and sort of the way in which your protagonist is kind of utilizing her intellectual work and her reliance on those books that she's read as almost like a means of self-preservation in this time when, like, caring for a newborn, as you say, is like essential. You're keeping this other human being alive, but you also have to keep, it's all consuming in some ways, but it's also like mind-numbingly boring. And so I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that, about reading and intellectual work as a means of self-preservation for mothers.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is a sort of slippage that happens with the long form where which is there in the novel for sure. There's things that I didn't make clear or that are kind of opaque even to me still. I think Helen is definitely reading Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. It comes through the letterbox, wakes up Rose. That's the big drama. That's the big plot point for and that's definitely what she's reading. She's not necessarily, I think everything else, for me at least as the writer, although I really recognize this might be experienced differently for the reader, but as the writer, these other moves that are happening, where we're drawing on Winnicott, for example, or Penelope Leach, as I mentioned, it's happening at the level of the narration. I kind of wanted a sort of narrative intelligence, which is not mine, which is citational and composite and collaborative. And I wanted Helen, and I think I could have made this clearer, I wanted it to be plausible. It was really important to me. It's plausible. She has a job in an office. She works for the council in my head. I don't make this clear, but this is what she does. And she is also a reader. And that's plausible. Without her, without her being justified. I read a lot of work where if someone is thinking, not even reading, but thinking, it's sort of justified as a plot point through being a researcher, being a PhD student, being an academic or adjacent or whatever. And I just don't believe that's true. I think people read. I think in my experience, people read without having not only they read, they think very deeply about their experience, and they have very intense and important vital questions about their experience, as Helen is having, as indeed Rose is having in her own way, as indeed the courier is having in his own way. So that doesn't really answer your question, apart from to say the novel as a long form, for me, certainly as I was in my, not only in the early years of my babies being babies, but in my life, has this companionship, this quality of companionship, because it's long, because I know I can return to it and interrupt it. I can have it in my bag, and so that as a kind of other place to go, another place to go imaginatively, has been crucial to me, like since childhood, since early childhood. I'm so grateful to it. I think those of us who've been able to discover that does offer that portal. So there's definitely that Helen's experiencing. It's a portal into another space of, like, Tom Jones. It's kind of sexy and funny, and it's an adventure, and I wanted her to have that.
And then the last question I had, which is for both of you, and Iman, you started to touch on this a little bit, I think, with the question about language, is that both of you do also work as translators. And I'm just wondering if you could just speak a little bit about how that type of creative work and work with language informs your own writing and vice versa.
Kate has a whole wonderful book. I mean,
I didn't want to tease that too much. But
what was so wonderful when I bought Iman's book from a beautiful independent bookshop here in Rotterdam, and I was describing the fact that we would be talking to each other, and Flip, who runs the bookshop, said, she was like, yes, just like, not only your books, which she had like the 3 of your books like there, so now I have, just like, but also your translator, Robin Moja. She then, because of her, how closely, how much she responded to your work that he's translated, she then sought out Agitated Air, his collaboration with Yasmin Seal. So I just love this story of her connecting via the translator to other works. That's just a small anecdote but I feel translation, the question earlier was about citation or being in relation or reckoning with difference, and translation as a practice, I think, is something, writing through and with existing materials. Translation is there, I think, is a kind of pulse or to everything I'm doing, even in books that don't name themselves translations. And I wonder if that's the case also for you, Iman, if you feel like translation is there as an activity with your writing and your poetry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially being translated, when you work with a translator or receive questions or whatever, or you read, for example, the translation in English, and sometimes you have anxiety about particular structure of a paragraph or a word choice, but you don't know why. English is not your first language to get the answer right away. And this would make me really think about my choices in Arabic, something you don't think about while you are writing, because while you are writing, you want to be there. You want to, you are going towards something and you are not sure even if you reach it or not. But when you are seeing the translation, you can see right away that no, this sentence should come before this. It's not only about word choice, it's about structure of a paragraph. So actually it impacts your relation with your own language. Absolutely. And as a translator myself, you see it in different way when you are just spending time, because the sense of humor in the English sentence is not catched up in Arabic yet. How can you do this? So you think about both languages like someone is looking in 2 directions at the same exact second. Yeah.
All right, we'll turn to a couple questions from the audience. The first is to you, Iman. The question is, what happens to the mother when her children are gone?
A mother in general, or the mother I mentioned in from Gaza?
That I do not know. I have no additional context.
What happened? I think literature and our experience, of course, but I think if giving a birth to a baby rearranges the question of identity. I mean, it first, in my opinion, it turns the identity into fragments, which should be actually fragments, not a solid thing from the beginning. But in our life, we succeed usually to formulate something as our identity. So this identity could be as migrant, as writer, as particular religion or ideology, whatever. So these fragments are rearranged completely by being a mother. So nothing, you shouldn't lose anything, but you should see everything differently. That's all, right? Um, uh, so I can't think about losing, you know, I mean, it's every mother nightmare. It's part of the anxiety all the time of not being able to protect uh, your kid and help them to flourish, in this society, in this world at the moment. So it's, as I think, it's in the back head of every mother in earth, this fear. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was about Gaza specifically, but I think so. I don't know if you have the same.
Unfortunately, these mothers come to few seconds on screen and then disappear in tents, disappeared. Maybe she herself is dead. Like, these mothers are not stars, are not recognized, for I don't know anything about her before this moment or after. She just appeared to break your heart and leave.
Kate, I think you've touched on this a fair amount in different ways, but another similar question for you is just if you could just address if there's anything else you wanted to say about your concept of mother defined relationally as it appears in the long form.
Yeah, there's a little moment in the long form where I do, or the narrator in collaboration with Helen is thinking about motherhood and other, as a kind of spatial, like in relation to that, like the word like neighborhood, or, like this sort of boundaried kind of almost gated space, which in my experience, it can sometimes present as is like, okay, those of us who understand or have experience of what this is, we're over here. There's a big gate, and then non-understanding over there, or non-experience over there, and that seems to me wholly wrong and not and wrong without reducing the singularity and the sort of specificity that Iman is also talking about. It is a very specific form of care work to look after a newborn, whether you're doing this in a female identified body or another kind of body. These are forms of mothering that are happening. It's very specific, but the actions are specific. We're not biologic. I don't think the biology is specific. I think the doing is specific. So there's something kind of practice led about mothering. That's where it exists as a practice. And as a practice which then generates its own thoughts and its own concerns and its own fears and its own specific modes of attention. So I actually don't use mother when I talk about the book. Maybe the questioner noticed this hesitation. I don't call it a mother book. I don't say it's a book about motherhood. I try to carefully say it's a book about living together. Related to translation, in the sense that of translating this lecture course called How to Live Together, which doesn't mention children once, but does mention animals and other living with other men and living, but so it is about and I think by actually putting motherhood into brackets and insisting on co-living, intergenerational co-living, let's say, I felt I was hopeful, at least that's my hope, that I was getting to indeed how this form of relationality and intense, but it's not qualitatively different. It's not irrelevant. Doesn't have so bounded and exclusive that has nothing to say or nothing to do with the form of living that you might do with an animal, indeed, or a parent or a sibling or a partner, or because we're never in fully equal pairs. We're always dealing with forms of vulnerability and distributions of power. So I do have a lot to say, so I could keep going, but I feel like maybe that's enough. But thank you very much for the questions.
Yeah, I think we all would have so many more questions and so much to say. This topic is quite endless, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time. But it is our time, so I wanted to thank both Kate and Iman and Nora for jumping in, And thank you to our audience who's been here and spending some time with us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And I hope to see some of you at some of our future events. And yeah, I think that's our time.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. It's been
Bye.
wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.